Hi, this is Carrie Hummingbird, and this is Soul Nectar show that explores the topic of essence, connection to that which is bigger than us. And how can we understand what that is through our experience, through feeling, through sensation, through knowing, through stories that we share around the campfire together. And that's what we're here to do, to share each other's stories and catch a glimpse and a feeling and a scent of that which is bigger than us through someone else's experience. And so today I'm really delighted to have Anita Sanchez on the show. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you're here. This is so great. So Dr. Anita Sanchez, Aztec and Mexican American, inspires people to discover and trust their gifts so that they become a life-giving connection to themselves and others. For decades, she trains leaders and their teams in Fortune 500 corporations and global nonprofits to overcome barriers and to achieve their dreams in business and community. And for my audience, which has a lot of Earth Keepers, I want you to really be inspired by this, because our gifts are not just for, people out in nature and people in the world, it's like we don't hold it to our community and we don't venture out. No, we meant to shine the light. And so Anita's really demonstrating that for us in a beautiful way. She's an international best-selling author of Success University for Women in Business, creator of her licensed process, Discovering Your Positive Core, and her newest book, The Four Sacred Gifts, Indigenous Wisdom for Modern Times, is going to be released like really soon on September 5th. So it's like, yes, I reached out to you. I said, please let me help you promote this book because we need this wisdom in our lives. We need this. So she's renowned for her inspirational presentations and workshops in leadership, diversity, and inclusion, culture, and positive change. And she's a member of the Transformational Leadership Council with luminaries like Jack Canfield and Marianne Williamson. She lives in the mountains of Colorado with her family, and her website is foursacredgifts.com. So easy to remember. Okay, well, let's get down to it, Anita. So I know you've watched some of my shows and you kind of, we just let spirit guide.
Absolutely.
Just so awesome.
You don't have to pretend that something else is happening.
No. And I wanted to share with you, these are retail earrings. I love these. I got these from the retail. Yeah. So I love them. Okay. So tell us a story of connection to that which is bigger than you. Like, when did you awaken in the powerful way to this? Or maybe you showed up and you just already had it.
No, my earliest recollection of this was when I was 4. I began this dream, and almost every night I'd dream and I'd see the earth and all these stick people with all these different sizes and colors, and they weren't holding hands. They had their hands on each other's hearts. And I had that dream, and then in kindergarten, they asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? So everybody does mommies, daddies. And I stood up and showed my picture. And I said, that's me there. We're all over the place. And the kids started laughing. And, as a 5-year-old, I didn't have any more language for it. But lo and behold, that's what I've been doing all my life, helping people all over the world connect to heart. Because that's what's really being called for, is the heart. Not to eliminate the mind. We need the mind, but it is the heart that leads when we want it to be life-giving for everyone.
I love that you're saying that, the heart that leads, because I just know on my personal journey, it's been a process to trust my heart wisdom. I remember my first class with Alberto, I studied with Alberto Vialdo in the Four Winds. And the first class is the South. Like, we shed our skins, we shed our old stories, we get rid of that. And I felt inspired to take his trip to Peru. I felt like I should go on this trip. But then part of me was like, maybe you should be more, studied more before you go. Like, maybe you should pack yourself with more wisdom before you go on that trip, right? You need more before you go. So I went up to him and I asked him, and I said, I don't know what to do. I'm not sure. And he just looked past me, just off to the side like he does. And he just looks back at me and gently touched my arm and said, Carrie, trust your heart. Your heart has gotten you in some trouble, but trust your heart. Your heart knows. And I just burst into tears.
Yeah. He knew, wise person, definitely, in trusting your heart. And when you say your heart's gotten you in trouble, I know what that's about, because it's an illusion. Because really, your heart doesn't get you into trouble. when you really go to that centered space, it's that the mind and the ego is still hooking and pretend sometimes and say, oh, this is the heart talking now. This is what's going to be good for your heart. And it's like, wait a minute. So it's important, to get still, surround yourself in nature with good people like that man, so that you can, because you knew the truth right when he said it, right?
I knew. I burst into tears. It was like permission for me to go do what I really wanted to do.
Yes.
Like I felt it in my heart. I felt the calling. Something feels like home for me about Peru. I don't know why, but it feels like home. And I wanted to go. And I'm glad I did. I never regret that decision. I had to take money out of my 401k and all that, but I went.
That's so good, because so many of us, me too, and it isn't over, it happens, but I catch it faster, is that we have these old stories about, I'm not enough, I have to be perfect, I need to know more. I mean, everything, and it's like, wait a minute, no, everything is here. Yes, you get into action to continue to expand. However, if you're already being called, like, that is home, it's calling you. It's like Ecuador calls me. I just got back from there. So I'm still feeling that home. And again, the illusion was, well, you've left Ecuador, now be here. Well, so you know what? I am here, and here includes Ecuador. Here includes everybody and everything. That's the connection that makes you realize, when that happened for me, that, oh, the whole illusion of being alone, it makes no sense. We're never alone.
So, but this is the thing that often people feel, is that we're separate.
Yes.
And it's something that it's been a deepening process for me, the realization of connection to all things, because I definitely was one of those people that felt very alone and separate, and I think it's being in the body, it reinforces this idea of separation, like, because you're in your body. So how can you be connected to all things if you're here and there's definitely a boundary that you can see and feel, or you think you can, how do you?
I know that what you're talking about to me is like, that's the part of the mind trying to trick you that you're only the body. But if we just stay with the body, think about it. You're breathing. You and I are breathing right now. We're not doing that alone. What's doing that for us? Well, the trees have cleaned the oxygen, cleaned the carbon, so we could have this oxygen, right? So we're having that. We also probably ate breakfast, lunch, dinner, wherever you are, whatever time of day, and you're processing that. It's here. So the fact is, we're never alone. And who are the people that actually gathered that? The earth that grew the seeds. So when we start even looking at our assumptions about just our bodies and being separate, it just isn't. The universe, the earth, only understands we. There is no us and them. There is no separate. And it makes me very happy, because that doesn't mean I don't go there. My mind and my ego, oh, I'm not doing this by myself. With my book, I have this thing I do like this. Yeah, that's the signal when I start feeling the stuff going, so all the things to do. And then I just like, wait a minute. Look at all that's here to help support me to get the indigenous wisdom out. To the message of that we're not alone, that we have everything we need. What we need to do is to reconnect to ourselves, all people, the earth, and spirit. And in that is all we need. And it's in the separating, in that illusion of separation, that we cause all this needless suffering. And I can do that very well. So that's my expression of doing that.
I think you're on fire. The fire is coming out the ears.
Exactly. Yes.
It's an interesting concept, and it's more than a concept. It's really an experience of, because I've had these meditations where I really feel connected to all that is. And recently, I think GP Walsh, but he was on my show and he blew my mind open a little bit, and which I love. I love having my mind blow open. I actually, after that conversation, about a week later, I was waking up with my sweetie, and we kissed, and it felt like me kissing me. And it was just a moment. But I went, oh,
yes,
that's me kissing me. And I know it now, but I'm not able to hold on to that all the time. But I had that moment.
Yes, I love those moments where you can, like, thank you for being a mirror to show part of me, if not all of me. And so that happens with with everything, including the stuff that's kind of messy. It's like, thank you for showing me that, which now I can embrace, because sometimes there's parts of me that I don't have a place for. But wait a minute. No, I need to embrace it all, because that which we try to shove down or push away, right, it just come back out. So it's like, no, it's all here. So I love that. And yesterday, just quick note, I was doing my morning meditation. I do chanting and then a meditation. And at one point, I felt in the meditation, all of a sudden, this vibration in my third eye, but it felt like a kiss. And there was a piece of me that just was like, wanted to be there forever, but I started going to my mind. And then I wanted to scratch it. And then I sunk into it again. And it was the longest kiss of myself, of the universe kissing me, of me being the universe. It was just wonderful. So when you say that about your sweetie, that is great. I love it.
I love that. So, you've held on to with your ancestors. I love this feeling, because I think that when I opened to this spiritual path of shamanism, when this like clutched me in its arms, it was actually there my whole life. It's so funny when I look back over my life. I was always wanting to go to these, to the powwows and things, even as a kid. And I was like, why do I want to go to the powwow? I was in Connecticut. I was like, why do I want to do that? And I always had like posters of Native Americans, and no idea why, it was just, look at me. And then when I opened to this path, it was like, and I started reconnecting in the spirit space with my Cherokee roots.
Yes.
Because the connection's lost in the physical plane, but I can feel them. And I started reconnecting, and I've had some really kind of mystical experiences around that. Like, actually, I'm going to go there because I go there on my show.
Good.
But I went to Cherokee Village, and it was the second year I took my sons there, and I went again. And I was asking around because I thought, well, maybe if I can find like a Cherokee shaman, I could get reconnected somehow in the spirit world with my ancestry. Maybe he can help guide me, So, and I think a lot of us feel that way, feeling that call, that there's that pull, but we don't know how to get there anymore. We lost our way. And we could look like, I've met so many people that have Cherokee roots, and we look like everything, we look all over the map because the Cherokee were like that. It blended with everybody. So I was there, and finally I got directed to this man who was working, carving some flint. And he said, okay, because I was crying. So he said, okay, I'll talk to you in a few minutes. I'll meet you out in the parking lot when I'm done with my shift. I said, okay. So I started walking away, and this ball of energy, that's the only way I could describe it, enters through the back of my skull, like right through the top where my spine meets the back of my skull. And now I know that's my visual cortex. There's like actually a portal or something there. And I was dizzy for, I would see the trees breathing. Mm-hmm. And that started me a journey that led to me reconnecting to this aspect of me that, remembers.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I can feel it. That's really wonderful. And I think what happens, because we have thought of ourselves as just being physical body and not being spirit too, that oftentimes our entry back to connect all that up is through nature. It's not only, but it is nature. The other reality is you're just naming, calling, and wanting the ancestors. They're always there. But we have to ask them. We have to invite them. Every night before I go to sleep, I invite my ancestors. And it's a wild story of my ancestors, because it could have been lost for me too. When I hear you say that, I understand the sadness, because growing up in Kansas City, my grandmother, on my mother's side, she was full-blooded Native American. Aztec was her heritage. And she would practice her, and everyone looked at her as funny. And so I then thought I was also Osage, because then several times a year we'd go to the Osage reservation, and my grandmother became fuller. She always did her ceremony, but she would practice in this free way. And it wasn't until many years later, like 8 years ago, that I found out, oh no, when some of the elders of the Osage were dying, my sister went to say goodbye for all of us. And they told her, well, we showed them all the pictures and said, you're not Osage. And oh my gosh, Carrie, all my life have put down Aztec and Osage. And my Osage uncle who taught me so much stuff, and my aunt and Lyra, all of them. And what they said is, no, and they told the story of my grandmother, who was Aztecan, but people saw her as weird and stuff. And so they would go to the Osage reservation, and of course, family would all come. And so we'd call everybody aunt and uncle, and so we just assumed that. So now I say, as you introduce me, as Azteca and Mexican American, and I also have a special relationship with the Osage. For they gave to my grandmother, who then gave to us, because she continued to practice what would have been lost. But the reality is there's a remembering. Everyone can remember it, and that's what was happening for you.
I can remember it.
Yes.
And as I've stepped out, because you can imagine, I lead drum circles and I do these shamanic healings and, I'm doing it, I'm facilitating it. Mm-hmm. But it's so interesting to me that I look the way I look. Like in my mind, it's like I shouldn't look this way or something, like I've got some rule about it. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Like they feel like, well, I can't really adopt that because I don't look the right way, or I didn't grow up with it. And then the guides were telling me, actually, I was trying to figure out like, what should my TED talk be? And the guides were saying, you need to do drum journey. You need to do performance, and you need to do drum journey, and you need to open the door for the ancestors to reach the people in the audience and across the world who see the drum journey. And because you look the way you do, you'll give them permission, because we are one human tribe. And they kept saying, one human tribe, one human tribe, one human tribe, that we've all been around the fire together.
Yes. Oh, we're all human beings. But what you're saying is so real, and it can be so painful, but it also can be such a freedom and a lifting, not only to yourself, but what you, like they were telling you, that you're reflecting that to everybody else. You can be who you want to be. For the longest time, I teach diversity and inclusion in corporations. And for the longest time, he's like, okay, now I'm going to talk about Mexican American and Latinos and all that. Now I'm going to talk about Indigenous people. And afterwards, it was the strangest things. Not always, but sometimes people would come up and say, oh, that was just beautiful. And Latinos talk about, but why do you have to talk about those Indigenous people? Or some Indigenous people come up and go, that was beautiful. The story isn't everyone's 100% Indigenous. We all stories are all, and it's gorgeous. But why do you have to talk about the oppressors, the Latinos? And my response always was, I'm not going to choose, because the choice is all of it, is all of us. And I do understand the different history, so I don't want to make light of that, what Indigenous people have endured, what we have endured. But I also know that you'll appreciate this. When I sit under a tree, I'm doing some of my biggest contemplation is under trees. And I wanted to have a deeper understanding to help people understand why we need to come together. Why it's not even that we need to come together. We already
are together.
We're already impacting each other. It's whether or not we want to impact each other as good medicine or bad medicine. Anyway, I'm breathing and I'm going, oh, please, my head is in it. Please tell me. Please tell me what's the deeper answer to help people, to help myself. Please tell me. And then I just started breathing. And then I started laughing, because what I realized, the oxygen went in. It didn't go, okay, this 38% goes to the Native American in you. This, 39% goes to the Latino in you. This part goes to the Greek in you and to the British in you. And it didn't go, well, this part goes for the female acting part of you, and that part, which is your male parts of you. All that difference, and I started laughing. I'm going, there it is. The universe has the answer, So yes, we need to embrace the difference, just the four directions. There are gifts that we're all given, but also it was always clear. We are one human being, one human tribe, one human family, and all those gifts are to come together. And that's what's being asked for, I think. And so I love hearing your stories because they're everywhere. The thing is, it can scare people, or they hear the judgment and then they don't want to get hurt. But what I have found is that, there are still some people who will judge me as, well, you should be more Mexican, or you should be more Aztecan, or wait a minute, Aztec doesn't even count. That's further south. Why are you people even taking up our time? You all died. I'm like, no, I don't think so. And instead of being crazy, it's just like, thank you for allowing to see part of me. Thank you
Yes.
for letting me put the spotlight on what I need to embrace. And I'm going to
Mhm.
keep moving forward because that's the call. The call is for us to get this connection, not just because of the me, but because of the we, and not just the we, the human beings, but look what's happening to the earth.
Yeah,
It's,
because we're disowning it all. I
yeah,
feel like I'm emotional right now because my ancestors are like kind of see, it's like, it's okay. Because I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of questions. I had questions around appropriation. I had questions around, but what about the aspect of me that was British? What about the aspect of me that did these things to all these people? And what about the suffering that was caused from that?
yes,
And what about the people that have legitimate that came back into bodies, came back into those bodies and are and stayed with it, past the Trail of Tears? What about those people and how they're holding this pain, really?
yes.
And the message was the ancestors beyond the veil understand, and it's okay if the people that are living in the bodies don't understand, but the healing needs to happen regardless. So go. And
Yes.
that's the message. And then I'm like, well, why me? It's
Why
like,
not, right?
what, so, and the message was also around what you're sharing. So this is so beautiful because I received the message too, that the 4 directions is what people need. Because we have all this assistance and we're not calling on it. We have the ancestors, we have the 4 directions, and we're not calling on it because we don't know how anymore, because people forgot how to do that. And it's not something I teach people how to open sacred space for themselves who are like Western. And I had one client say to me, but I feel guilty opening sacred space because that really is a native thing and it belongs to them. And I said, sweetie, you're a human on the earth. The earth belongs to us all. And when we're not connecting with the 4 directions, we're not in sacred space, we're not in spirit, in our presence, in our awareness, in our knowing, then that's when we start to act from the ego. And that's why the separation is here and why we're treating the earth so poorly and each other so poorly. So we need the 4 directions more than anything.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you told her that because it's not, well, first of all, I think appropriation is a really important question to always ask. And holding both the oppressed and the oppressor, and not wanting to romanticize either sides, because not everybody Indigenous is all healed and well. I mean, we have some of the most, horrors that are happening, and totally understand how it could, but we have to make a different choice. The reality is that are, we are both, we are everything. And when you are struggling with that, when you were telling her, the reality is we're always in sacred space. By setting up consciously sacred space, I always start, I'm not setting sacred space, I'm acknowledging sacred space.
Yes.
It's already there. And if I learn something, like one of my chants I've been doing for almost 3 years now, comes from Seneca. And it's a very short little chant. I sing it a couple of times in the morning and at night. But I always name those ancestors because even though they're not biologically that I know of me, the reality is we're all connected. We know that from physics. We know that from biology now. We know it all. But naming them, because that's the hurt part, is because all of us want to be acknowledged and seen, to be able to bring forth our gifts. And not everyone has been allowed to do that. So when you talk about, well, wait a minute, some of my ancestors, the British, or mine, who were the Spaniards, who did these different things, guess what? It was not our fault. However, it is my responsibility, our responsibility, to see what was left, the systems and structures that are set up, and then to be in action to change those, to be support and to be loving to ourselves and to others. So the work still continues, but it's not carrying that heavy burden. You can do that. I work with that a lot with leaders and businesses and stuff who are really trying to do some major work of shifting the whole notion of including everyone's gift and the racial disparity that has happened in the violence. And some of them are white. And so they're like, but who am I? And I said, who are you not to? Not out of some paralysis or just going downward spiraling because of guilt. It's not your fault. You didn't set these up. However, you are responsible now because you're responsible because you benefit from them. I benefit from it. I also don't benefit on the other part of it because people see this face as opposed to yours. I know what you're talking about. They see my face, and what they see first is Indigenous. They don't even see the Mexican first. They see the Indigenous. And so all sorts of things happen, good and not so nice, because of what they see. And so for me, it's just open my heart, paying attention, and then reflecting back that which I really want. Some days I have little bits of me that want revenge and all that other stuff, but luckily it doesn't last long. I've grown older enough to understand that that only reaps more. But I then am able to instead reflect back what I want is community, compassion, empathy, and I have gifts that I can use to help me be in that space. That's the wonderful part.
Well, what I really want is all of us to sit around the fire together again.
Yes.
And not hurt each other.
Yeah, that's really it. And it is happening. So by the work you're doing, you're making that happen. By the work I'm doing, both inside of businesses as well as outside, it's happening. There are gathering of elders and communities all over the world that are happening. And people are coming from the different directions and bringing their gifts. That's what my book is all about. Is back in the 90s, 27 elders from different parts of the world came together, created a hoop, 100 eagle feathers, and they put into the hoop 4 gifts that Spirit told them to put in. So that human beings, it's for all human beings, so that we can remember our connection to the Spirit, people, and earth. Because it's only when we can hold all that we can have peace and harmonious development. And my gosh, that's the call. So the work you're doing, Soul Nectar, and the drumming, oh my gosh, I could feel that. Drums, nobody can hide from the drum, right?
Nobody hides from the drum. My drum calls them home. It's like it's like the most amazing thing. I'm trying to get away from the word crazy. It's the most amazing thing. When I did one, did a brief one, because the message I got at this gathering of conscious people was that they needed they would be served if they desired it, they'd be served to have the rights of the time to come, the keepers of the time to come from the carol. And I received those on Aztec and Mexican. So I was like, okay, you want me to give them that? Okay, sure. So I opened this drum journey, and the answers just came in, and everybody received it, and everybody was, right on the journey. Everywhere I said, when I was seeing it, I was telling them, and they were seeing it, they were already there. And I mean, we were all having the same experience. It was amazing. And we got done, and everyone just sat there. Like, wow, what just happened? There were some people that weren't aware of it, but you could tell the people that were tuned in, it was meant for them. And man, they
it's powerful, isn't it?
This is why I love this work, because they tell me I'm a door opener. You get to hold the door open. I was like, yay. Yeah. I love my job. I'll just hold the door open and you can come in. That's great.
I get it. I call myself a messenger. So glad to meet you, door opener. What I find myself is to be a messenger, and it's the messenger between all these different so-called worlds, which is ridiculous because there's only one world. But right now, what I'm being called, and have been for some time, is to be messengers of elders of all different traditions of the 4 directions. And so it's almost like a modern version of tweeting. So go there, the elders there, find your place, the location. First of all, we need to reconnect to the land. And so for some of us, it's easy because we can connect right where we are. For others, left. So for many European Americans, part of the work that I have them do is to reconnect to where they came from, and then to apologize to the land for leaving, even though it wasn't them. It may have had generations ago, but to do that. And they were like, oh my gosh, I have this different feeling now. I said, we're holding all this stuff in our bodies. when we can release that, when we can forgive, when we can heal, when we can unite, when we can hold hope and visions and be in action, all of that just allows that expansion to happen, to understand we no longer have to split off people and spirit. And even in the corporate world, where, believe me, let me tell you, back in the 80s and 90s, and even in the 2000s, I do 1-minute meditations. And people would, afterwards, the feedback would be, wow, that was like going to spa. But oh my gosh, one time I got carried away and I did a 2-minute meditation. And the feedback was, that was a little too long. That was just a little too long.
Yeah.
It's like, well, thank you for letting me know that. Because
It was a little too much connection.
you can do 1 minute multiple times a day, right? And get centered. So we're diverse, There's some things that would feel like, whoa, really? To me. So it's like, okay, just baby steps. And we're all here, though. We're all here and can hold each other. And that's when he's out.
Another message I've gotten around this whole thing is like what keeps people separate is all the stuff in the DNA. It's all the history in the DNA. And that actually what we're here to do is clean up the ancestral DNA with forgiveness and love. And that because then when you are around somebody, you won't be triggered, when they meet you and you're Native American and their ancestors came here and, decimated your tribe, your population. They won't meet you and then immediately feel a recoil or immediately feel guilt or immediately feel shame, because all of that separates us. If we can clean that up ourselves in our own being, in our DNA, it in the quantum field, the DNA changes. Like,
yes, it does. It does. I think a great example, what you're talking about, that's in this physical space so clearly, is Standing Rock that happened.
yes.
What to have those young women runners, and then to have the elders, women and men, come together and hold those sacred fires, and that people came from all over, and they're not just Indigenous people, the various tribes, but other people, but all that space was holding prayer in unity. Everybody had what they needed, and when they were to leave, it was to take that with them. And so I think there is a responsibility, not about guilt and shame and all of that. In some way, some part of me, because the psychology part of me says there is no bad emotion, stuff that comes up. It's if we get them stuck. It's to move through, right? We need to let it, everything's changing all the time. But to get us into action. So if all that helps us get into action, so more Indigenous tribes are supporting each other. More is happening to call from these wonderful women and men at Standing Rock to go different parts of the world to help them to protect the sacred water and the land and the animals and the sea life. And it's wonderful. So yeah, and if we stayed stuck in, oh my gosh, no, it's that Mexican Spaniard part of me, because the Mexicans were oppressed too, but it's, or, oh no gosh, the Aztec, what they did to some of the other tribes. And it's just like, wait a minute, we get to create why I use the word life-giving all the time, because that's my barometer, is what is my thought, are my words, are my actions life-giving, or is it causing me to suffering? And it's very clear. There's no confusion. It either is or it isn't. And if it seems like confusion, then I just stay still a little bit longer and it becomes clear.
See, now that was the point we started with, was how do we get into our hearts and know the truth of our hearts? And that's your barometer. So that's how you do it. You feel into it. Is this giving me life? Is this expanding? Or is this, I use expansion and contraction. So is this
in your body, you can feel
expanding and opening me,
or
and relaxing me? Or is this like closing me off and getting me tight and bringing me like, and what I call them is thought tunnels. Like, am I going down in a thought tunnel that then I'm gonna like maze around in forever, looking for a solution, and there's no solution because thought tunnels are designed to trap you there?
Exactly. It's the ego wanting to stay alive. You need me, you need me. And it's like, okay, yeah, I do need you. You do great things to help me survive and stuff, but stay over there for a moment and I'm going to do this. And then I'll come back and get you. I know you'll come back, but let me just do this right now. It's great. It's really wonderful.
So share like one of your most profound moments, I think, of reconnection.
One of them was I was 19 and I kept having this dream. And the dream was, to speed it up a little bit, the dream was, and I love to sleep. Dreaming is very important to me, but I didn't
Me
want,
too.
I was nightmares. Every night I'd go to sleep and I'd be sound asleep, and then there'd be this dark-haired, curly-haired doll, like coming out of the sky, and she'd just be falling and falling, and I'd be witnessing, almost feeling it, and then she'd hit the ground, and it would be like, I'd sit up in bed, and I didn't want to go to sleep, and I'm an 8-9 hour sleeper, so I was starting to get like 4 or 5. It was not good for me, and it happened for months.
Mm.
Then one night, the dream changed, or the nightmare turned to a dream. I'm asleep. The doll starts, I mean, I can see everything. I can see this white house. I can see this porch. And then I see the ground with broken cement. And then the doll hits. Only this time, I'm like there with her. And there's this light. And the light is so huge. It's not like, well, there appeared light. It's just, there always was light. It is so infinite and big. And it was so amazing. So then, of course, after that, I wanted to go to sleep to have this dream, no longer a nightmare, but a dream. So immediately I started calling my mother. My mother wasn't home. She was always home to get my calls. And then I called my little sister, and I couldn't get her. She was busy at work. So I called my older sister, who always is pretty busy and doesn't usually like as much me spending my time about dreams. But nonetheless, she took my call, and I started telling her, like, I had this, and I was heartbroken, and the doll hit, and she started crying. She started sobbing. She's, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm sorry. I'm like, Paula, I'm trying to, like, I couldn't get to the light, right? Because she stopped. She goes, that wasn't a dream. That was you. We were on the 4th. You fell like 30 feet and hit. You were a baby. And I was supposed to be watching. She was only 5.5. She's watching a baby sister. And she didn't know, and I rolled off and I hit, and they thought I was dead. And so when I could finally, she stopped sobbing a little bit. I said, Paula, but let me tell you, I'm sorry you had that responsibility, but I just want you to, I'm so glad this happened. That was my earliest memory. And I think that doll, if that was me, what was I, like a year? She goes, you were 14 months old. And I said, I knew at that point that we are light, that this whole thing, energy, light, love, it is real. And it's not something you'll wait for. It is here. And it was just so clear that I just think, wow. So I know that even though all the hardships I went through as a young girl and a teenager, because I'm a survivor of incest for 9 years, that was and then my father was murdered. Just the stories are incredible, and they're all in my book. But I believe that thing that happened to me when 14 months old allowed in the physical world for me to make that reconnection. Understand this is actually all one world. And so that to answer your question, I think that's a big one. That for me remains, and it comes up. Sometimes I call it forward when I'm dreaming. Other times it just comes up and I realize, oh, just need to be in that to understand it is always here. It changes everything, though.
It changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I love that. Okay. We're going to end on that note because that's so beautiful. Tell us about your book, and tell us about how people can help you, support you in sharing this message, and anything that you want to share.
Yes.
It's just here's your time.
Yes. Well, the 4 sacred gifts, Indigenous wisdom for modern times, is for all of you who are listening. It's for everyone who's not listening. It's for the beings that don't listen with ears like us. It's for everyone, because it's the Indigenous elders' wisdom from all over the world that brought this hoop and these gifts, these 4 beautiful gifts. So if you want to learn more about how the power to forgive the unforgivable, the power of unity, the power of healing, and the power of hope in action, if any of that calls to you, then please get this book. And you will learn not only from my stories, but the stories of many people from around the world, women and men, but these 43 elders and 3 young people, leaders from Standing Rock. You will hear their words of wisdom, and it'll so support you. and give you some of the how that we were talking about, like how do you move through? And the thing that I know, and these elders know, is that if you go within, we have to work out here too. But a lot of the development, the healing, the hope, the forgiving, it's an inside out job. So we have to heal from the inside out. So what I want to offer to all of you is if you go to foursacredgifts.com, you can get for free a download of the song that was created for my book. It's called In Right Relations, which is what we've been talking about. Being in right relation with yourself and with everything else, with people and spirit and nature, the earth. And it's a beautiful song. You can also click one of the buttons if you want to pre-order the book. It comes out September 5th in hardback, ebook, and audio. And I'm just delighted and honored to be a messenger for all this different elders' wisdom. And if you want to hear more too, you can just listen to my Facebook Lives. I'm doing one every day as a countdown. I'm on day 27, Carrie.
Oh my gosh,
I countdown to the launch. And every day I feature just a little bit of the wisdom, because there's lots in there, of each of the elders, so that people can hear a little bit of that.
And so they can watch them back because they're all on your page, right?
Yes, they can watch the back ones. And they're lovely and messy and human. And so that's not, this great.
Stoic. The image of perfection.
No, it's totally real. And so, yes. So go and check that out. If you're called, then purchase it. And if you're called even further, then share it with friends. I so want these elders from all over the world and myself, my work, to be heard. Because that's really what it's about for each other, is that we have to speak and be in action so that we can put these visions out there, these messages that are bringing us together, which is what it's called. So, Carrie, it's been fun talking with you.
Yes, I think this is such a good connection and so well aligned. And I thank all the ancestors for bringing us together and helping us to do the good work in the world and opening the door and sharing the message.
Absolutely.
I just opened the door.
And you just opened the door, and I'm the messenger.
You share the message.
I'm one of them. There are many, but yes, it's wonderful.
It's great to be in purpose.
Yes.
Okay, so I always end each call with kisses. So if you want to join me, I always give kisses to the audience. Okay, so here we go.
Okay. You do a lot of baby ones. Yes. Thank you.
See you guys
Bye,
next
everyone.
week.
Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye.